Hey, it's me, TB, and today I am bringing to you a mix of my January and my February wrap-up. This is because when I finished January, I went back to look at the books to talk about in my wrap-up, because I only talk about like the best of the best now, because otherwise I would be talking for too long. I realized that there just wasn't like a lot of books in January that I like actually liked and wanted to talk about in depth. So here we are. If you like this video, subscribe, like, share, all that. So first off, I finished the audiobook of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I'm pretty sure this was a 5 out of 5 stars. It's been like at least 2 months now, so things are kind of getting scattered, but I remember reading this and really liking it. And this novel basically follows our unnamed main character as she basically meets and then marries this man named Maximilian de Winter, and she starts to feel haunted by the presence of his first wife, Rebecca, and then stuff ensues from there. We'll say that this isn't a plot heavy novel. This is more of like you are in the main character's head and you're kind of like seeing her struggle, I guess, with trying to adapt, because she is, not very rich, and Maximilian is one of the richest people in the area. So it's like she has to adapt to that major shift, and also she has to adapt to trying to become this new wife. And I don't know if I said this already, but his first wife is dead, and it was a tragedy, blah, blah, blah. Basically, everyone hypes up the ex-wife to be this incredible homemaker and all that stuff. So basically, the main character feels very pressured to kind of become that person. And yeah, I don't want to say much more because I feel like half the fun is just reading through it and experiencing the internal issues that come along with that book. Again, it's just very much a internal look and more less so of an outside plot-heavy experience, I guess. But we'll say that the way that Rebecca is kind of brought in as this presence is done very well. Even though I know that it is a work of fiction, you start feeling that Rebecca really is everywhere. Even when minor things come up in the plot, you start kind of assuming that they're connected to Rebecca, even if they're not, and you're convinced that you play into the bigger story of Rebecca, because it just feels that she had such an overwhelming presence that it just feels like she is connected to everything. So yeah, that is Rebecca. Then I finished the last Jane Austen novel I had to read, and that is Northanger Abbey. Was her satire on the Gothic as a genre. And I'll say that this is probably my second favorite novel by Jane Austen, just because I liked the writing in it and how she kind of made commentary on the Gothic subgenre. And this, I think our main character is named Catherine. I am pretty sure that is her name, as she basically goes to town, of course, and she meets this family who own this abbey. And of course, she reads a lot of Gothic novels. She's convinced this abbey is gonna bring her on some Gothic adventure or whatever. Not a lot to say. There isn't a lot to say because it's a classic by Jane Austen. So there's romance. They talk a lot. Not much else to say really, unless you want to read a satire on Gothic novels. Then, as part of my buddy read, to read through the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas, along with Kath, who I will link to down below, we read Queen of Shadows, which is the 5th book, 6th book. It's somewhere around there in the series. And yeah, basically it's falling off right where Heir of Fire left off at, which I won't spoil because, this is halfway through a series, so yeah. I will say that I like this one more than I liked Heir of Fire. I don't think it was as great as Crown of Midnight, but it is still one of the better points in the series so far. I mean, with Heir of Fire, you could only really go up from there. So yeah, I liked seeing more of Manon. I liked the new POV that we get in this book. I think the one thing that I did not like was the fact that Dorian is in this, and it's just his POV is just very boring for reasons that become apparent once you read it, And then Kale bounces between me liking him and me hating him, because he is just such a interesting character, we'll say. I still don't like Rowan. He's just an awful person. So yeah. Basically I liked in this book how one of my major issues finally gets finished off, I guess, So yeah, that's that. And I'm probably going to read Empire of Storms soonish. And then I read The Wolf of Oronaro by K.S. Veloso, I think. And this is basically following our main character, who I forget her name of because I listened to this via audiobook. So all the names are just kind of not here, And so in this book, we basically have our main character who has been abandoned by her husband after like, I think it was their wedding night, she killed a man and then her husband left her, and he's basically been like missing for the last like 10 years, I think, or something like that. And she recently got a letter to basically ask her to meet him in this like neutral city or neutral country, I forget which of the two. And she goes there, and while she's there, she ends up being betrayed, and shit hits the fan basically. And like, contrary to the cover, there isn't as much action as you probably would like expect. It's very much more so like, I guess, a like political intrigue stuff more than like physical fighting. So if you like look at the cover and you want like a lot of like action, probably not this book, because there is action, but it is very like sparingly throughout, I guess. Like the more heavy fight scenes are like towards the end, towards the later half, and this is like a long, like a longish novel, so it is just a lot of like talking and vibing and like learning about the world itself. I also liked it, and I'm pretty sure I gave it like 5 stars, I think, because I did have like a major issue towards the end, but it got resolved very quickly, and I was satisfied with that, so great. As a whole, I like our cast of characters that has been like set up, and I like where we're going to be going in the next book, I think. It's one of those things where like, it is set up in such a way that I'm either going to love the next book or absolutely hate it, and it could go either way, you know? So yeah. And then I read the Book of Night Women by Marlon James. This is basically following an enslaved woman in Jamaica named Lilith. This is a more literary novel, so again, it's not like very like plot heavy. I think it's more focused on like Lilith as a character and just how she interacts with the world itself, I guess. And while she's there, she basically is sent to live with this one woman named Cersei, and eventually she has to be sent away because she kills a man. It's a whole fucking thing. And through plot stuff, she ends up being asked to join this group of women who are plotting something, and, you know, stuff ensues. Again, I feel like this is more focused on like our main character Lilith and just how she like interacts with the world, and less so on like plot stuff, I guess. And obviously, since she is enslaved, you know, trigger warnings for a lot of stuff. There is rape, there's murder, there's talk of torture. It's just a lot to deal with. So go into this knowing that something bad happens to enslaved people. It's probably like at least mentioned in this book. And it is like fairly short, I think. Yeah, it's under 400 pages, but still it is very like hard to read. I still give it 5 stars though. It was just written so well, and by the end, well, honestly, not even by the end, but just I felt very connected to Lilith as a character, as well as the rest of our like main cast, I guess you would call them. Like a lot of like, and yeah, it was a interesting time. I don't want to say good because like it's not, nothing is good in this book, but yeah, it was an interesting time. I do want to read more by this author because I heard his writing style can get very like confusing at times, and I heard that this is like where to start so you can kind of like get adjusted to his style. Then I read Shadow Kiss by Rochelle Mead, and this is book 3 in the Vampire Academy series, which I'm reading as part of like the Vampire Academy read-along that's going on, which I will link down below. I'm pretty sure I read this in February, I think. This is kind of continuing where the second book left off at, with Rose kind of like dealing with PTSD basically from what happened at the end. And honestly, I think this is probably like my least favorite in the series so far, just because it feels very like transitional, I guess, in a sense that it's very slow and like not a lot happens. It's very much focused on like a few plot points that just kind of get dragged out for a long time. So interesting, but it didn't feel like a lot of like plot important stuff happened, I guess. Although it is obvious that this is kind of like setting up what happens next, but it is kind of like Air Fire in a sense that it's very much kind of like separating the series in two, you know. I do like a lot of like plot points that are brought up in this, and I do want to continue on in the series. It's just, it was not the best book in the series, you know. Then I read Elatsoe by Darcy Little Badger. I did read this via audiobook, so there's that. And I ended up giving this 5 stars. This is following our main character Elatsoe, as she has the power to like see ghosts and kind of like interact with them, as well as raise the ghosts of dead animals. And in this world, kind of like all kinds of like mythological creatures exist, you know, like vampires, fairies, all that. And in this book, her cousin gets murdered, and she decides to investigate because she has a dream, and from that dream, she knows that the murder is not as simple as it seems. She decides to investigate, and yeah, stuff ensues. One of my favorite things about this book is how like she brings up that she thinks that her cousin was murdered and not just like killed in an accident, and her parents like believe her and support her in her like quest, you know. They aren't like dismissive at all towards her, and I just really liked reading that, you know. It's honestly just refreshing, kind of like see a like teen MC, you know, not be like immediately go against her parents for whatever reasons, and I felt like they actually had like some level of like a bond between them, you know. So that was nice to read as well. And yeah, it was a great time. I honestly don't think I have any like critiques for this because I just thought it was like really good. It feels like what YA should be at, because it feels like our main character is a teen and her like life is a teen and she behaves like a teen, she thinks like a teen. So it's just nice to like read YA that is YA, you know? And it's just like, it isn't one of those books like the main character feels like she was like a 25-year-old that was then aged down to like sell better. So I'd love to see that. So yeah, and technically I finished this in March, but it was like March 2nd, and it was a buddy read for February, so I'm going to count it here. And that is A Taste of Blood Wine by Frida Warrington. This was a buddy read with Therese, who I will link down below. And this is like a weird bit to explain. I'm pretty sure I give this like 4 stars, but it is like this weird mix between like, it could be like a 5 stars or like a 2 stars, and it could go either way. It's weird. But in this book, we're like in the years following World War I in England, and Charlotte is the daughter of this like scientist guy, and she is his assistant. She likes having that role in the lab. She doesn't like being, you know, in society and having her little season to be like married off to whoever. She'd rather be in the lab. However, while she is basically forced to be in London to basically, you know, have her season or whatever, she ends up meeting Carl, who she does not know at the time, but he is a vampire. So, you know, this is like a vampire romance. And eventually Carl ends up becoming an assistant under her father as well. And, you know, sparks happen and stuff ensues. This is like a weird novel to explain because it isn't like plot focused or like character focused either. It's more like a mix of like both and neither. I know it doesn't make sense, but again, it's like one of the things like if you want like vampire romance, you will probably end up liking this. But it's just that it's just weird, I guess. Like I can't even explain why this book is so weird. It just kind of is. Like the characters don't ever feel like really like fully fleshed out either, but I still liked them. And the plot doesn't really feel like it ever has like a point to it. It's kind of like chilling and vibing, kind of like going wherever it goes. But I also didn't mind that either. So it's kind of like weird to like read and kind of like explain, I guess. I will say that the vampire lore in this is like different because in this world, like the like creator of Carl is Christian, and he basically believes that vampires are chosen by God for whatever reason. And also in this world, there's this place called the Crystal Ring, which basically kind of like this like separate dimension from the normal world, and vampires have to go into the Crystal Ring every now and again to kind of like rest and recharge because they cannot sleep in the like normal world. And through the Crystal Ring, vampires can also like travel very quickly, kind of like just go wherever they want in just a few seconds. Yeah, it's just like a weird book to read. I did really like it, and I do want to continue on in the series. It's just a weird series to explain. Like what I will say does well is that I feel like it does the atmosphere very well. Like it feels very like post World War I, feels like very spooky and kind of like gothic almost, but it is very like slow paced, I will say that. So if you're expecting something like quick and fast, this is like not the book for you. I think that's all my thoughts. So those are basically like the greatest hits of the last 2 months. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, subscribe, like, share, all of that, and hopefully I will see you next week.